Remember, making your own colors is always a great thing to do, right? So what I'm gonna do, we should already, as a rule of thumb, know how to make something close to a black, which is just brown and blue, okay? So I'm just gonna add some water to here. Make sure my color is varied. Sometimes I wanted more brown, sometimes I wanted more blue, but I don't want just one good old boring color. I wanna make sure I have color variation, okay? So here goes my brown. All right. Here we go. There's the blue. And because this is gonna be gray, I'm gonna start adding a little bit of white, okay? Also, when I look at the project, the gray has ever so subtle a purple tone to it. So remember, tint is white, tone is gray, and shade is black, okay? So whenever I say like a tone, it means a purple to that gray, okay? So I just have a little bit of red to it, just very little. I don't want a purple. I just want a gray that looks a little purple, all right? And I'm gonna just start blocking it off, all right? So I'm just gonna do the rest of what I did not do last week. Remember last week we ran out of time and I had to get ready for my next class, okay? So even though we did do a lot, I didn't do all. Some of you guys, if you continue to paint after I was done, then you guys probably did all. But I know myself I didn't. So I'm gonna go ahead and just block. And I'm gonna go watery. I already know, to me it's a fact that dark layers need 2 layers, okay? Dark layers don't need 1 layer. 1 layer is very flat, it's very transparent, but 2 layers are really good. So I did my darkest color there. I'm not gonna just end there, okay? If I have a little bit of darks down here, I'm gonna go ahead and push my darks into my vase as well. So just blue and brown. And remember, whenever you're barely changing your color just a little bit, don't grab your color from the center, grab it from the edge, okay? Just grab it from the side. If you grab it from the center, because sometimes students will email me during the week and they're like, you know what? First my color was too blue, and then my color was too brown, and then my color was too blue again, and then my color was too brown, and too blue, and too brown. And I'm like, were you grabbing the next color a lot? It's like, yeah, because I wanted to change it very fast. I'm like, that's a little bit of a problem, because if you grab a lot of color, it's just gonna become that new color. So whenever you need to do a subtle change, just grab very, very little of them, okay? So now I'm gonna make my color lighter, okay? Significantly lighter. Just not as light as my plants, okay? Don't forget that. My flower should still be the lightest, all right? So now I'm gonna bring this color down. No more white, you know? I don't think it's white enough. All right, let's color check. A little too white. And that's the fun thing about color checking, all right, you guys? Colors are not gonna pop out exactly all the time. So color checking is a good discipline. Just test it on there. Make sure it has enough red, make sure it has enough white or not too much white, but always be okay testing your colors. I do oil painting professionally, and even though I do paint a ton and I'm pretty good at painting, I always have to be color checking, okay? Some of my paintings are not, sorry, they're very realistic. So even I know how to mix the colors, but even I know that even though I might have a really good and close color, it might not be exactly the color that we're looking for. So that's why I have to color check as well, okay? So there's nothing wrong with color checking, just adding a little bit of color here and there. It's a really good discipline, and it helps you understand what's missing on your old color, if anything is missing, okay? Color check, color check. I'm gonna add a little bit of brown on this. The background, you guys, you don't even have to make it too blue or too brown. You can make it a little different, but just don't add too much color to the background, because then it takes away from the foreground, okay? So the more color that's in the background, the more busy the painting gets, all right? So I like my color. You're gonna move it around. Move, move, move. All right. There we go. Move it to the other side. All right. Just remember, it has to be darker than your flowers. If there is a test that you guys have to do, that is the only test. Make sure your grays are ever so subtle, darker than your flowers. All right. And I'm just scumbling here because I'm using a round brush, and round brushes scumble very easily. So, all right, I'm happy. Now I'm gonna go lighter and even warmer. So lighter and more red and brown. But make sure the more important part is lighter, okay? And by the way, guys, if you ever run out of material and you want to go to the studio, Wednesday is the day that I'm there for sure, but I'm usually there more than Wednesdays. I'm usually there like 2 or 3 days of the week. Let me know if you guys cannot do one specific day, and then I might be there on a different day. Okay? But Wednesday is the day I record the oil session for the adults. So I prefer the setup that I have in the studio, so that's why I go and record into the studio. But yeah, if for any reason you guys cannot make it, I'm probably gonna be there another day of the week. All right. So just adding more contrast, you're gonna see that the base, also by using that excessive amount of grays, my base is gonna start popping out. And look at the way that I manage my brush. If I'm gonna color this line here, I move my brush on the right-hand side, that way I don't get it onto my base. If I'm coloring this base, I'm moving my brush on my left-hand side, that way I don't cover my base, okay? Make sure that you guys change the direction of your brush. That's really important, very professional, by the way. Old artists are gonna say like, whoa, who showed you to change the direction of your brush? That's so interesting. It's like, I learned it myself. You could tell me learned it at the hub. I'm adding just a little grace up here just to change the monotony of just one boring charcoal gray. So I'm adding a little bit of that warmer gray as well. Okay, that looks pretty good. So now I'm gonna go the lightest, but I'm also gonna go cooler, okay? So more white and more blue. Still a gray. It's still mixed with all this fun muddy stuff. But this time the color is cooler. That has to do with your atmosphere, you guys. Sometimes the atmosphere is blue, like the blue of the sky. So a lot of your grays tend to become blue, okay? Like the table is more green because there's more yellow on the ground. So it just makes the table a little bit more green. So I want a very similar light value, just a little cooler. I want my eye to be excited of seeing so many colors. 1 or 2 colors is like, that's okay, that's nice. But 5 or 6 colors, it's like, whoa, that's really professional, that's really good. And they're not very hard colors, by the way, they're very similar. Remember, you guys, I illustrated this picture, so it looks very kind of blocky and stuff. I'm not gonna do such a blocky background. I'm gonna keep my background a little cleaner than that. So I'm not gonna do like some of the smudges and stuff that are happening here. I'm just gonna leave that a little cleaner, okay? All right. And finally, over my ground, I'm gonna make sure I clean my brush because I need a really, really clean color. So I might just grab another brush just to make it a little faster. So I'm gonna grab white, this gray color that I have here, and yellow. All right. Basically, it's a very neutral kind of brownish green. All right, here we go. And remember, chunky paint is really good for highlights because always try to remember that highlights are chunky. Highlights are impasto. Impasto means thick paint. That's all it means. It's fancy terminology for thick paint. It's art terminology for thick paint. All right. All right, that looks pretty good. I could go darker here. I could go lighter here. But to me, that is enough. That is more than what we need, okay? And our background is pretty good. If you look at the old picture from last week and you take a look at this new picture, now you're gonna see this new picture that the flowers pop out a little bit more. They're much more exciting. They're all much more lively. And that's part of what we're looking for. We're looking for that overall contrast, all right? So if we're done with that, the rest is just a little bit of details, predominantly doing the greens on the flowers, and that's gonna be pretty much it. So let's clean our brush here. These colors are very simple because the greens have a really high chroma, so that means that they're really, really bright. You don't need to mix any white into something that's really bright. You just need to have like rich, pure colors. So I'm gonna grab blue and yellow, okay? Really rich, really, really, really rich, deep green, okay? I might add just the tiniest amount of brown, but I actually like the color that I'm coming up with, really rich. So if you're gonna make small lines, make sure your brush is vertical like this. It's not sideways like this, okay? This allows you to make very small, fine lines, all right? So here we go. So I'm gonna start with just adding a few of these bright greens. Make sure you shape the little leaf here. All right, this is just really intense color. We'll change it up in a second. But right now, we're looking for this intensity, okay? And make sure there's a little water to your brush, or if you even have a tiny brush, go ahead and use that little tiny guy. All right. And these are just little details, little fun stuff. Okay. There's nothing to it. It's just little greens, little stems, little stems, little guys, little things, little things. All right. Make sure you guys just take your good old time, all right? All right, so I'm finished with the high chroma color. So I'm finished with a really, really, really bright color. Now I'm gonna make one that's a little muddy. So I'm gonna add yellow, more yellow. And I'm gonna add a little bit of red. If you guys don't wanna risk the red, just use a little bit of brown, okay? So this color now feels more natural. It feels like it's a more natural green. And what happened there is just the use of the complementary color of red into green, it gives you a muddy green, okay? And that's really nice because I'm looking for mud. And very easily, I was able to get some mud, okay? There we go. Now I'm going to start building up more natural greens or more earthy greens on top of this really nice green that I had. A little bit more white. Doesn't have to be that dark. Make sure your color is very earthy. Earthy means that it has a lot of browns to it, or earth tones. Also, if you forget things, like I forgot a petal here. Sorry, I forgot the gray of the background next to that petal there. So I might come back later and just fill that stuff in, okay? All right, a little bit of earthy stuff, earth stuff, earth stuff. Earth tones, we call this. All right, so that looks pretty good. I think I'm relatively happy with what should be going on here. So now we're gonna go white and more yellow, okay? So be careful with just adding white and no yellow because your greens will look gray. The yellow will bring the green back into the color, okay? The picture is much more gray than green, but I actually prefer the more green. It looks like a nicer picture. All right. Little outlines, just implying a little bit of a light source here. And I am going to add gray on top of this color, but that's going to come in a second. So remember, these are high chroma colors. These are colors that are super, super saturated. Not too much white to them. Okay, I'm going to go here with pure white, and I'm just going to touch the corners of this. Okay, just like so. So I need gray again because I need to add some little gray. You guys don't have to do this gray. This is just an option. I don't need you guys to be doing that because remember, sometimes these things make the painting a lot more difficult. But if you guys want a challenge, you guys could definitely do that. But it's only if you guys want to, okay? If you guys prefer it without the grays, do not do this step. This is just an option that you guys have because you guys are working from home. But if that option is going to give you guys a really hard time and not a really fun time, you don't have to do this gray, okay? The one I'm about to do in a second. Okay. So now into my greens, I'm going to add some of this gray that I just made. And I'm going to add a lot of white. A lot of white to it. Okay. And in my light areas, I'm going to hunt for grays. So right in here, I'm going to start hunting for some grays. So it's going to bring some reality to the picture. Without this grace, everything looks beautiful, but it might look too beautiful. It might look too nice, okay? There is such thing as too much too nice. And without this grace, the picture might be too much too nice, but it's fine. Remember, if you guys want too much too nice, that's okay with me. I prefer too much too nice than a messed up flower, okay? So I'm perfectly fine with too much too nice. I'm gonna add a little bit of that gray into some of my little flowers here. That way my flowers are not just flat and white, but they're just little dabs. It's like, where did you put them? I just dabbed them on there. I didn't really overthink of how and where to put them. Mostly on the bottom and just mostly little dabs, okay? And that looks pretty good. I'm gonna go more white and yellow. See, everything that I'm doing now is simple. If you guys have a tiny brush, this is the time for that tiny brush to shine, okay? This is kind of like where that little number one brushes come into play. The one means the size of the brush. So usually when it's a number one, it's like a tiny brush. So if you guys have a tiny one brush, just go ahead and use it. All right, so I like it. And, you know, I think it's well made. Last but not least, we're gonna add a little variation to the center of the flowers. And we're gonna add a little bit of darks, again, a little bit of those really dark greens between the flowers just to separate them. And I think we're gonna be okay. All right, I think that's gonna be our done deal. So I'm gonna go into my smallest brush, which I think it's a 2. I don't think it's a 1. It doesn't have a number, but it looks like a 2, not a 1. And just with this very dark green, almost black, I'm gonna go in here and just touch the darks that I had already done last week. All right. They're just telling me that there's some depth behind this stuff here. All right. And I think it looks fine. All right. I'm going to gently also go into a little tiny bit of a dark gray right here. Just a little dark. I have to color check because I don't know how dark it is. It's too dark. And once I color check, I'm just going to add a little contrast between petals, okay? These are things, like I said, you don't have to do. It's just things that I see that will actually make my project better. But if your project is really good and this is going to give it a twist for the wrong, you don't have to do this, you guys, okay? If you want to give it a go and after some time, you know, after 1 or 2, it's not what you thought it was going to be, just stop there and we could still recover and go back to it. But again, these are just little things that are helping me contrast some of the flowers that are behind versus some of the flowers that are in front. That's all this is, okay? If it's too much work, don't do it. If it's too confusing of the work, don't do it, okay? This is just if you guys feel up to it and you guys want to give yourself a challenge, try to do this. But if it's too hard and the product is not turning out the way you were doing, you preferred it before, then we could just stop there, okay? There's no shame in that. These techniques are a little hard, what I'm doing now. But I just want to show you, if you guys want to try and just add contrast and very subtle transitions, you could still do this, okay? Very subtle. So my colors are a little darker, but they're not dramatically darker. And once I have that, I think I'll be okay. All right, really good. I forgot to paint something in here. I think this was the background. So I'm just gonna add some of my grays into here. All right, there we go. And now we're just gonna do the center of the butts, this little guys here. We're all done, all right? That's gonna be pretty simple. I'll show you. So using the same one brush, this one here that I have, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna mix yellow, a little red, but very much a lot of yellow, okay? The color is just a little red, It's not an orange, it's just a warmer yellow. There we go. And I'm mostly gonna start poking this color through onto the darker valleys, okay? Just these ones in here. All right. Dab, 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 dab. And remember, this is still an orange, and I'm okay letting some of the older one come through. I don't have to cover the original one. Color variation is much more exciting than flat colors. So if you only had one boring color, that's going to be exactly it. It's going to be one boring color. So I want to make sure that we don't have one boring color. All right, that looks pretty good. Now let's add a little bit of red, a little bit more red, and let's introduce a tiny bit of brown, okay? Making it a little muddier. So now I'm gonna find the center of my bud here. All right. Just add a little bit of dark values onto the center. Okay, then I'm gonna go ahead and do that to another one. Find the center here, and I'm just dabbing, you guys. I'm just gently pressing my brush like that, okay? Obviously, always looking at the drawing, but nevertheless, just dabbing. All right, and I'm gonna go a little darker. First, I'm gonna add just a splash of red. Kind of invite the bees. Okay, just a splash of red. And then I'm gonna go darker with more brown and a little blue. And I'm gonna go a little darker here in the middle. And then transition it with a little lighter color. All right. And then I just add a little dark between these two. There we go. And I'm gonna add a little bit of dabs here. And please, you guys, if you have any difficulties with this project, let me know. I'm happy to help you guys with the drawings. I'm happy to help you guys with anything that you guys are working on. But just make sure you let me know with time, because sometimes, not you guys, but I've had students like right before the class, it's like, is this right? I get a lot of emails and I'm like, oh, I don't have a time to check because I have another class coming up. It's like, oh, I really want to check because I know the other class is coming up. It's like, yeah, you have to let me know earlier, okay? All right, you guys. So that's pretty much it. Once you guys are done with this, it's pretty much going to be a done deal. You could come in. These are little things that I'll leave strictly up to you guys. But if you feel like your flowers, the petals on your flowers are a little messy, just come back with a gray and clean it up. See? Just come in with a small brush and clean it up. Clean it up, okay? But that might be it. I think your flowers, all of your guys' flowers might be really good. I want to obviously see the photos if you guys have a chance. But I'm just going to go ahead and clean up any of the petals here, just to keep them sharper, keep them more square, not have such a organic petal to it. All right, and you could also do that with a pure white. So if you have something that's really light and you'd like to clean it, just grab the really small brush and gently touch the corners. Okay. And this is going to clean up your drawing so much. And that's going to be it. All right, you guys. So do you have any questions for this acrylic piece? This is the last acrylic piece that we're going to be doing. We were hoping that you know, the studio would be open by now. It really looks like it might open partially with small classes by by June. So hopefully we get to see you guys there in that class if it's already open. But this is going to be the last acrylic. The drawing that we were going to be doing was supposed to be a little harder. What continues on to the next class, we're actually going to make it more fun. We're going to make it more animation style drawing, just because you guys are far. And remember, you guys are actually using oil pastels, but if you don't have oil pastels, I'm going to be using crayons, okay, as a substitute for oil pastels, all right? So in terms of acrylic,